Hello, Big Other. Hello, everyone. This is Joshua Kornreich, the author of the novel CAVANAUGH, which was published by Sagging Meniscus Press in October of 2021, and which had the very good fortune of being selected as a finalist for the Big Other Book Award for fiction. I'm going to read the opening chapter of CAVANAUGH. It is a chapter called Kavanaugh is Not Kavanaugh. Now, that's Kavanaugh with a C, it's not Kavanaugh with a K. And we'll get to what that's all about momentarily. So, Kavanaugh is not Kavanaugh. It had been hibernating on and off inside his head for years. It was a thing, a voice, a living, breathing voice. A voice separate and distinct from his own voice. He had at first mistaken it for the voice of someone else in the rows of stadium seats surrounding him. But now, after a long hiatus, this thing, this voice, had reemerged from its cerebral dugout, refreshed and replenished, alien yet familiar. "Play ball," said the voice. The man whose head this voice was inside of, they called him Kavanaugh. And he was, more or less, much like everyone else, a pencil pusher, a number cruncher, a middle-aged middleman who never had an agenda in life other than to provide for his wife and child. He was fair-skinned and freckled, pockmarked and birthmarked, made of the same make as his forebears before him. The hair on his head was no longer the flowing dark mane that was once the envy of friend and foe alike, but rather a clumpy, thinning tumbleweed of silver and beige. While his chest was still broad, it had gone soft in recent years, and though his midsection had evolved into what his wife affectionately referred to as his man pouch, Kavanaugh was a man who, despite the odds, remained comfortable under his own layers of pasty flab. His eyes were a chestnut brown, and though his long-range vision was on a slow and steady decline, Kavanaugh was still able to see Kavanaugh from afar with sufficient clarity, as the latter took a slow yet confident trot toward the diamond and waved to the cheering crowd. Let it be clear, Kavanaugh was not Kavanaugh. And let this also be clear, Kavanaugh was not Kavanaugh. Yet, regardless of what the respective virtues and shortcomings were, it was Kavanaugh with a K, not Kavanaugh with a C, who had been bestowed the honor of delivering the night's ceremonial first pitch. The crowd roared for Kavanaugh with a K as he took the field. The crowd did not roar for Kavanaugh with a C as he took another large bite into his stadium-length hot dog. In fact, the only person in the whole stadium who paid him any mind at that moment was his young, red-haired, freckle-faced daughter, the apple of his eye, who spoke softly and sweetly in his ear as he went about his chewing. "Can I have one of those?" She pointed to a bobblehead doll being held in the lap of a toddler in the row in front of them. She then pointed to an identical bobblehead doll to the left of the toddler, then to another identical one to the right, and then to yet another appearing larger than life on the giant digital billboard behind center field. Little heads bobbled all around Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh decided to respond to his daughter's request just like any good American dad with a mouthful of hot dog would. "What for?" he said. It was not that Kavanaugh had not wanted to buy his daughter another doll. After all, there was nothing wrong with her wanting another doll, and despite her being in possession of so many other dolls already, Kavanaugh did not see the harm in letting her add yet another to her vast collection. Plus, this was a different kind of doll from the one she already had. This was a bobblehead, or a nodder as some in the know might say, so to let her have this particular doll would not be, in his eyes, spoiling her in any substantive manner. Besides, he figured it was only a matter of minutes before her friend's father, O'Reilly, who was sitting right next to them, would end up buying the bobblehead for his own daughter to add to her undoubtedly vast doll collection. Thus his thinking went, if he himself should feel guilty about carrying out such an act, then they would both have to feel guilty. But why would either father feel burdened with any sort of guilt about purchasing yet another doll for his daughter on a night such as this, when the four of them, the two fathers and their respective daughters, were having such a fun and memorable night out on the town? They were sitting only a few rows behind their favorite minor league team's dugout on a pleasantly mild summer night, feasting on Cracker Jacks, soft pretzels, French fries, ice cream, cotton candy, and anything else their wallets could accommodate. Cavanaugh knew that O'Reilly already had guzzled down 2 or 3 beers too many as it was, all before the opening pitch, but to Cavanaugh that was okay. It was the bus that was driving them home that night, not O'Reilly. While he was not surprised that O'Reilly's daughter hardly seemed to pay any mind to her father's excessive drinking, he figured she had probably grown accustomed to it over the years. He did have some concern about his own daughter seeing O'Reilly in the deeply inebriated condition he was in. But neither girl, sitting between the one father that was sober and the one that was not, seemed to take notice, or at least show any hint of unease. As for Cavanaugh himself, it had been years since he had given up drinking, so when it came to dealing with big drinkers like O'Reilly, his feelings ranged between empathy and contempt. But for Cavanaugh, it was not the risk of spoiling his daughter with a bobblehead that was irking him so much now, was it? No, it was not. It was the likeness of the bobblehead. That was what was irking him. For Cavanaugh knew even then that the voice of the announcer blaring over the stadium loudspeaker would linger in his head and haunt him for days to come. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for tonight's ceremonial first pitch. Heading now to the mound is one of the great patriots of our time and one of the true protectors of our freedom. He is fresh off the bench of the Supreme Court of the United States. Will you all please rise and give a warm hero's welcome? Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, defender of our Constitution, Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh's daughter turned to Cavanaugh. Kavanaugh? Did he just say Kavanaugh, Daddy? Was he a famous player or something? Do you think we're related? O'Reilly chuckled hard at this, the kernels of his Cracker Jacks spewing out of his mouth as he chuckled. Cavanaugh looked over the girls' heads, his eyes meeting squarely with O'Reilly's own. Hey, O'Reilly, did you know about this? Know about what? That tonight was Brett Kavanaugh night. I didn't until I saw those bobbleheads on the way to the John. Got my little girl one. Just then, O'Reilly put his hand into a white plastic bag and pulled out a bobblehead whose likeness was that of the Justice. Only this Brett Kavanaugh was not clad in his usual judicial attire, but instead was wearing the uniform of a minor league ball player with a shiny red cap on his oversized head and a pocket-sized bat in his tiny grip. But it was Kavanaugh, all right, smirk and all. Is that for me, Daddy? Asked the O'Reilly girl. It sure is, Angel. Aw, thanks. You're the best dad ever. As the O'Reilly girl gave O'Reilly a great big hug, the latter gave Kavanaugh a Kavanaugh-esque wink. Daddy, Daddy, said Kavanaugh's daughter, can I have one too? Can I? What do you need one for? Oh, come on, Kavanaugh, said O'Reilly. It's your own daughter, for Christ's sake. Kavanaugh shot a mild glare at O'Reilly, then said, So you think I should actually get her one? Why not? Kavanaugh knew that when it came to the subject of Brett Kavanaugh, there were those who believed that he was a sociopathic sexual predator and those who believed he was an unjustly vilified umpire of the law, and that when it came to those two opposing viewpoints, there was a high degree of correlation between the viewpoint held and where the holder of such a viewpoint fell within the spectrum of the political mainstream. Kavanaugh, for one, more or less held the former viewpoint, but he was not one to ruminate about such injustices when it came to justices, for he figured that when it came to justices and those put in charge of nominating and confirming such justices, that they all, more or less, must have, at some point, committed sexual assault themselves over the course of their own private lives, for why would one tolerate such a gross injustice otherwise? Nevertheless, Kavanaugh tried to respond to O'Reilly's direct question in a way as to avert a political or moral discussion, especially given the elevated level of O'Reilly's inebriety. Well, for one, she doesn't need another doll. She already has more dolls than anyone could count. Doll, said O'Reilly. This ain't no doll. It's a bobblehead. And what's better, it's one of them electronic bobbleheads. See, when you push the button on its base there, the head starts snapping super duper fast. Why, this thing here? Heck, it's a steal, Kavanaugh. It'll probably be a collector's item someday. Kavanaugh's daughter's face lit up. You hear that, Daddy? It's going to be a collector's item someday. Please, pretty please, can I have one? Pretty please. Pretty please. Kavanaugh sighed as the real Brett Kavanaugh removed his baseball cap and waved it at the crowd after hurling what appeared to be a surprisingly perfect slider. As the crowd cheered, the toddler with the bobblehead sitting in a row in front of Kavanaugh removed her own cap from her head and waved it back at the justice. A man and a woman shouted behind Kavanaugh in unison, "We love you, Brett!" Surrounded by cheers and applause, Kavanaugh thought he might just go ahead and hurl one out himself. Not a baseball, though, but rather his own guts. Hey, Kavanaugh, whispered O'Reilly as the two men's daughters were transfixed with what was transpiring on the mound. Don't get your knickers in a knot. She'll just think it was some ball player or something. Trust me, she'll never know. O'Reilly winked again. Somehow, O'Reilly's cockeyed logic made sense to Kavanaugh, so he decided to go along with it. And on the way back from the men's restroom, in the middle of the third inning, Kavanaugh pulled out his wallet and purchased a pint-sized Brett Kavanaugh for his beloved French freckle-faced angel. And with that, all was right with the world. In the bottom of the fifth, Kavanaugh saw the same toddler in the row in front of him give her Brett Kavanaugh bobblehead a kiss on the nose. How cute, thought Kavanaugh. Probably just for good luck. No one said anything about Brett Kavanaugh or Brett Kavanaugh's likeness for the rest of the night, neither for the remainder of the game nor during the long bus ride home in which O'Reilly snored all the way through until his daughter punched him hard enough in the shoulder to jostle him awake when they had arrived at their stop. After lumbering off the bus, O'Reilly and the O'Reilly girl walked a few paces ahead of Kavanaugh and his daughter, their two-story house only a few houses away from the stop. When they reached the O'Reilly house, O'Reilly fumbled about the pockets of his pants for several seconds before finding his keys, giving Kavanaugh a no-look thumbs up. Kavanaugh watched O'Reilly limp up the driveway toward the front door of his house and wondered, was the limp something O'Reilly had always had? Was it from a leg injury from long ago? From way back in his childhood, perhaps? Or maybe he had had it since birth, a genetic defect of sorts. Or perhaps it was simply a byproduct of the kind of life in which O'Reilly had indulged. The cumulative effect of a lifetime's worth of guzzling down copious amounts of alcohol now manifesting itself as some sort of neuromuscular ailment. The two girls exchanged goodbyes, then onward the two Kavanaughs went, father and child, the moon following them stealthily through the trees as they made their way home. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked. And that concludes the special reading of Kavanaugh. Thanks for listening, everybody. And thank you, John Madara and Big Other, for inviting me to share my book with everyone. Take care, everybody.